Welcome to this tutorial in which we will be creating a sprinting system in conjunction with a stamina system. So this is because I got a lot of requests to enhance the stamina system, show how you can actually make use of the stamina system that I've created earlier to make use for something like a sprinting system. So I will leave the links in the description, and also there should appear a little link card in the top right of the video for you to go to that video if you want to do the actual system to begin with first. Or if you don't want to follow along the whole tutorial for that system, you can also just download it because the system is available for download for free. You can just grab the project and then load that up and then have that up when we start this tutorial, and we should be starting at the same place. So let's jump into it. Before we continue with the video, if you like what I'm doing here on this channel, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel a lot. Anyway, let's get back to the video. So here we have what we are going to be creating in this episode. Now this will be building upon the stamina system that we made in a different tutorial. So I'll be leaving a link in the card on top of the right, and I will also leave a link in the bottom of the description, so you can either follow along and do the tutorial first, or if you don't want to do the tutorial, you can just download the project so you can have the same starting scenario that I have before this tutorial, so you can end up with the same system here. And what we have here essentially now, we have hooked up to the stamina system the ability to sprint. So we have added the functionality that if I start holding down shift key, which is our sprint button, we will run twice as fast, and our stamina will first of all start decreasing, but it will also stop its current regeneration. And when we stop sprinting, then it will resume its regeneration and go up to max again. If we start sprinting and we actually sprint so long that we run down to running out of stamina, it will automatically both pull us out of the sprinting speed, so we get to our normal speed again, and we start regenerating the stamina, and also it will prevent us from trying to start sprinting again until we reach a certain threshold, which is determined in the blueprint component itself, which is currently set to, I think I put it at 10%. So yeah, that is what we will be building today. So here we are inside of Unreal Engine 4.26. This is the stamina system that we created earlier. Now, what we had before is that we had a couple of debugging things here. We could add and remove stamina. So if I press R, I remove stamina. So if we were to go in here and press R, you can see that the stamina is being reduced. And this is essentially what we will be building upon. However, since in the testing here I had some to show you off that you could actually, like, for example, listen to an event where you lost all your stamina and you would, for example, not be able to do something specific, then I have a system where you can like run out of stamina and it stops flying, and that's essentially why we had the flying here in the beginning, to just demonstrate how that works. We will, however, be removing that now and make use of that for our running or sprinting instead. So if we go and see here, out of stamina, you see we can set the movement mode to walking, but we need to change our movement mode. Let's see, where do I have it? Over here, set movement mode. We'll just disconnect this one so we don't actually have flying movement mode. So that's it, and then we'll disconnect this out of stamina thing for now. So now when we start here and play, you can see that we're running around and jumping like normal. So that's all good. Okay, that's it for preparations, except for one more thing. What we have now is currently a event which we're firing off when we're getting low on stamina, and one when we're out of stamina. And then we have some basic debug information to show like that is actually working. But we also need to determine when we have enough stamina to run again. So we need to have, first of all, the ability to sprint. And when we run out of stamina, we are supposed to stop sprinting. And when we are trying to sprint again, we're only allowed to sprint as long as we have enough stamina. So we have some sort of threshold. So to set this threshold up, what we'll do is we'll go to our blueprint component for stamina, and we'll make another event dispatcher saying we have, let's call it enough stamina amount or something like that. So that just says that we have enough now to sprint now, essentially. And we want to go to our third person character. We want to say, okay, we want to listen to this event. So what we'll do is we will bind. We'll get, this is the blueprint component stamina system here. So we'll just drag off from that and say we want to bind enough stamina amount. So now we say that we're gonna be actually listening for that event if it actually is called at any point. So that's good. Next part is we want to have something to actually happen when we get that event. So we'll add an event like this. And we'll say enough stamina to sprint, for example. I'm being super explicit here in my naming conventions, but just to make you understand. So this event will fire when we have enough stamina to sprint. So now we need to actually make sure that that actually happens. So let's have a condition for that. So let's say we need to have above 10% of our stamina to be able to sprint. So here we have our system where we're actually adding stamina, and if our stamina is above 0, sorry, if it's below or equal to 0, we have auto stamina. If it is below, if it's below 25%, then we say that we're out of stamina, and then we also want to have a situation where we notify when we are above 10%, then let's say. Now I want to preface this with a little bit of, this will not be super optimal, and I will explain why, but if we drag out the call here to enough stamina, and we want to, let's say we do a simple check. Let's make it easy for ourselves and check if this is greater or equal than 0.1. That's not 0.1, like so. Then we want to say that we have enough stamina. So we can essentially do a branch, and we say, well, if none of the other conditions have been met, and we check with this, we can say, okay, do we have more than 10%? If we do, we call we have enough stamina, and then we end, or else we just end. The reason why this is not super great is because, well, this happens whenever we're adding stamina at all, which means we're actually subtracting or adding stamina essentially. So every time it changes, since stamina is changing, well, almost all the time, we have this running on a timer, which is, I believe, every 0.1 seconds. That means that all the time when we have more than 10% stamina, we will be sending this message, which is superfluous. We only need to have it send whenever it changes from one of the other states, right? So the optimal way here would be something that keeps track of which state we are in. So if we run out of stamina, we set to out of stamina state, and then when we reach low stamina state, we set to that state and such thing. So we'll see if we have the time to do that in this episode or not. But if we don't, then you at least know why the motivation behind this is and how you can also improve upon it. So now we're saying we have more than 10% stamina. We can call our enough stamina has been reached. Okay. In our character, just to test if that works, what we'll do is we'll print out and say enough stamina to see that we're actually getting the message when we're expecting to get it. So now you can see the problem which I just mentioned here. You can see that we're typing out enough stamina all the time here whenever it's updating. So let's just get rid of our large stamina, and you'll see that we have stamina 0, and it's just printing out the debug string saying it's subtracted. If I let go here and it goes over 10%, we get enough stamina messages being sent. So it is working, and now you get very visually why you want to make some considerations for making this a little bit more performant, because we don't need to send it all the time. Anyway, so yeah, let's work on actually adding a sprint system. So let's go to our project settings, and we add a input over here, and we'll say we want an action mapping, and we want to add one, and we'll call it sprint. Now we want to set a key let's set the left shift key for that. And then we can close this out. We go to our third person character. We right click and we type in sprint. So now we have an action event for sprint. And essentially what we want to do here is we want to keep track if we are allowed to sprint or not. So let's say we make a variable saying able to sprint. So this represents if we're able to sprint or not. Whenever we get to the point where we have enough stamina, we want to set this variable to be true. Like so. Whenever we run out of stamina, which is this event over here, we want to set this ability to sprint to false. Like so. So now we have the two conditions that can happen. When we have enough stamina, we say that we're able to sprint, otherwise we're not. Okay, so how do we make use of this? Well, when we press the key and hold it down, we should be trying to sprint. So let's say that we get our movement component, set walk speed, and here it represents how fast we're able to run. And 600 is the default normal walk speed. So if we were to set this one to, let's say, 1200 to make it like super obvious that we're running because it's really fast, like so, and then we make it so that we are, when we release it, we set it back to being 600, like so. Now we can test out if the functionality actually works, if we're able to sprint. So if I hold on shift, actually nothing is happening. Actually something is happening. It is running fast, but I just didn't notice how fast I was running. But yeah, so it's running fast and it's all good and fine. So the functionality works like that. So that's good. So it's sprinting now when we press down. However, we're not allowed to get this state if we are not able to sprint, right? So what we can do is we can check, and if this is, let's see here, we want to have a branch. We're gonna keep this fairly simple. If this is true, we're able to sprint, we'll set the value. So now if we have no mana, if we have no stamina, so if I subtract all the stamina and I try to sprint now, and I keep holding down shift and I keep removing our stamina so we don't actually get enough, nothing is happening. I'm running at the normal speed here. It's not allowing me to sprint. So that's the condition to allow it to not enter sprint mode, right? But we also need to have the ability to drop out of sprint if we are if we run out of stamina. So let's make a function. Let's say we want to have this and we encapsulate it into a function, and let's say that we call this one start sprinting. And this is a little bit redundant because we don't need that. We're not going to have that much functionality inside of it, but we want to encapsulate a little bit so it's a little bit prettier essentially. Now we do the same thing over here. We get, since it removed my mark, I'll do this. I right click, I make this into a function, and we'll double click in there and we'll rename this one to be start running, or start walking maybe, or start running is fine, because running is normal running and sprinting is sprinting really fast, right? And then we'll make a return node. So that's all good and fine. This means we have now managed to make two functions which will allow us to start running normally or sprinting. So when we are out of stamina, we also know that we're not supposed to be sprinting anymore. So we can actually say we can start run, for example. Now this isn't super clean, but it's mainly just to show you how you can do this, because essentially what would happen if you run out of stamina, you want to stop everything that is possible for your character to actually have continuous stamina drain. Anything that would be draining stamina continuously should be stopped at this point, because they no longer have enough stamina to continue doing so. And every ability that you have that is able to in some way subtract stamina should have a check to see if it has enough stamina. In this case I've just named it able to sprint, but this would be enough stamina to do whatever, enough stamina to dodge, enough stamina to attack, whatever you want to have. They might have different thresholds, then you might want to have different properties for them to compare against. But yeah, so you need to have both a stopping function and a stopping function for when you run out of stamina, and a stopping function to allow it prevent it from starting using the ability again, essentially. So now that we have that in place, the very last thing we need to do now is just make sure that we're actually draining stamina when we are sprinting. So let's just make a super simple timer event for that. So we'll do a timer by event, and we'll say every 0.1 seconds is fine, probably. And we want to have it looping, and we want to promote this timer to a variable so we have it available. So we'll call this our sprint timer ref. We will then connect this timer to an event. So we'll just drag off here and create event. So this is the event that will happen every time. So we'll call this drain stamina from sprinting. Like so. And what it will do is it will drain our stamina now continuously every time this happens. So we'll promote this to a variable, and we'll say that this is our sprint stamina drain interval. So the amount of time between each time we drain. And in addition to that, we'll create another variable, so we'll just duplicate so we have another one. We'll call this one stamina drain from sprinting per second. Now this is a super long name, but it's just to show you super descriptively about what it actually is doing. So let's say that whenever we're running, we drain 10 stamina or something like that. So we'll set this to 10. Now, what we want to do in the drain stamina from sprinting is we want to take how much stamina we're draining per second. We want to multiply it with a float, and the float we're supposed to multiply with is how much stamina, the interval that is playing. So if we wanted this interval to be more often or less or whatever, it will still drain the same amount of stamina per second, because this calculation here is in place. So that allows us to play around with the variables without screwing up the code, essentially. And now we just need to drain. And how we did that is by the same notion that we had before here. We have, when we press our R key, we are adding stamina of a negative amount. So we'll just take this, copy, drag it over here, and say whenever the sprint is happening, we want to reduce it with a certain amount. And the amount we want to reduce with is this amount that we've calculated. But we want to be a negative value if we want to reduce. So we will multiply it, not by an integer. We'll do it by a float because that looks cleaner. And if we multiply it by -1, that means that we turn whatever value we have calculated here into a negative value. So we'll just plug that in, like so. So, since we have everything for free now from the blueprint component, what should be happening now is whenever I press and hold shift when we are running, it should start draining our stamina. So let's see if that actually works. And I'm running, and the stamina is, you might not see it because it's probably draining too slow. Let's see here. Let's open. Let's increase the amount by something like 50. Just to see if it is actually true what I'm saying. And you can see now that it's draining down. And you can see when we reach 0 here, he is continuing to running. He's not continuing to run. He's continuing, but he has now been reduced to his normal running speed, and is not allowed. When I so that is working in that regard. The next part is that the character didn't actually regenerate stamina or allow it to regenerate. It kept on draining the stamina because this event here is looping, and we're continuing to loop it even though we have actually stopped and we're no longer getting in here. Or getting in here. We only get in here when we're pressing down first, but this event is still looping and playing. And that's why we made this reference over here, because we want to say that this reduction of stamina should stop happening whenever we're no longer running. And that happens whenever we have run out of stamina. So if we go over to our code here that happens when we run out of stamina, what we can say is we want to get our sprint timer reference, and we say we want to clear and invalidate the timer. Now this will make the timer over here no longer happen when that happens, and it will only start the timer again whenever we pass through here, which only is able to happen when we're able to sprint. So let's see if that works. We start sprinting, we're draining stamina, and now it's regenerating again. And now we have enough stamina so we could technically start running again, so let's do that, and we're running. So all of that is now working fine. Now you might want to have some added functionality here as well, because like you saw in the beginning, I had too low of a value when it came to the stamina drain over here, so that the regen was actually greater than the stamina drain. If you do not want to have a stamina drain, you don't want to have a stamina regen while you're draining stamina, you could just add that as well here, that you want to stop the, or actually you would have it up here, that you would stop the, we could actually do that, let's do that. So we'll do this, and I think we called it stop regen, yes. And if we have 0, it should be an indeterminate amount of time. And we can also say either when we release it or when we're out of stamina. So if you're holding down the shift key, maybe you don't want the regen to start again or not. It's completely up to you when you want to do this, essentially. Let's give ourselves a little bit of space. So I might go like, well, when we're out of stamina, we might as well have the regen going again. Or you might want to have it at a certain timer or something like that. But yeah, so we can go and say start regen, restart regen. That's what we called it apparently. And this is just functionality that we made inside of the blueprint component, so it's available there. It's the same logic that we applied inside of this sort of combat sphere, combat cube that would allow you to like prevent regeneration for a while. Like I showed earlier, I can demonstrate it again. So if we have our regen or our stamina reduced a bit, when we walk in here, we're essentially stopping the regeneration until we leave the cube again. And that's similar to what we're doing now. So when we're running and sprinting, we will no longer regenerating stamina, but we will continue to do so when we reach the lower part, when we run out. However, there is another issue here where, let me demonstrate, if we were to go and I start sprinting and stop, you can see that it continues to drain. That's not something that we want. So that also comes back to this, where you want to have, when you release a key, you want to allow the stamina to start regenerating again. Like so. So if we sprint and I let go, okay, it's still going. We have a little bit of a bug. Right, we don't only need to restart our regeneration. Also, when we release the key, we want to make sure that we are actually clearing and invalidating the sprinter reference, because we want to say you should no longer be looping this timer event anymore. So we need to clear this also if we let go. And of course now this is a little bit hastily put together and not super organized. So you probably want to clean this up a little bit. You probably want to have functions like the restart region and invalidate timer here put into a function. Actually, let's do that. So you see how you should probably clean it up. So we'll make a function of this. We'll call it start recovering stamina, because that's essentially what we're doing. We are starting a region again if it was stopped. We are invalidating a sprint timer draining if it was running. Then we have a return node like so, and then we go back. So now we have that happening over here, and we also want to do the same thing over here. So we'll do the start recovering stamina, and then we'll remove these like so, just so it's easier to understand. So let's see what happens now. So we start sprinting, I let go, it starts regenerating again. We start sprinting, it gets to 0, it starts regenerating again, and also stops sprinting, of course. We get to a certain point, we can start running again. And also now, to make it completely clear that the region is actually not working when we're starting to sprint, let's lower this stamina drain value down to 10 again, like we had before, which was not enough to keep the stamina down because we were regenerating so much. And now you can see that we are actually draining the stamina. So the region is actually not working currently, or it is paused essentially. And then we run out and we can no longer sprint. And then we get a message that we have enough again. So yeah, I hope that made sense, and that you were able to follow along, and that you get a better understanding of how you can like build upon the stamina system further with other systems and other functionality essentially. Hopefully you found this video helpful. If you liked the video, leave a like. If you did not like it, leave a dislike. Leave any suggestions or comments you have down below. Subscribe and share this video if you want to see more like it in the future. That is all for now. Keep on learning. Take care.